Glad to see all you guys here tonight. The numbers have picked up now that school is back in session. Tell me something this. I'm a Pine Bluff High graduate. Tell me something good that's happened to you this week. You know, there's a lot of bad news. We got Afghanistan going on, and we got COVID going on. Tell me something good that happened this week to you. Anything?
I spent 3 days on the lake camping.
3 days on the lake camping. Well, that's good for some people.
Well, it beats working.
It does beat working. Wow. Okay. Anything else good? You woke up every day. That's good. That is good. A daughter got a promotion and you have a job. That's always good when it comes to eating, especially. Yes, sir, Larry. Mm-hmm. Sister's out of quarantine. Well, that's good. That is good news.
Rachel and Chadwick actually come home Sunday to her mother's house.
Right.
And was there for the afternoon, and then she had to go back.
Oh, so Rickland got to make a little home visit for a few hours then. Well, that's good.
Mother looked a whole lot better after she had stopped worrying about her.
Yeah, when you get to see your baby girl, you know, doesn't matter how old baby girl gets, does it? Yeah. Yeah, always worry about them. So, all right, well, we're continuing in our journey with Jesus, journey through the life of Jesus. This is our 7th week. We're going to be in this for 10 total weeks. So that means after tonight, we've got 3 weeks left. And got some ideas about what's going to happen after that, but I'll share that after I firm that up, okay? All right, so I say this every week, okay, but just to make sure, not everybody here, you know, everybody that's here tonight hasn't been here before, so just a little, very quick synopsis. One thing we've learned through our lessons so far as we've been going through the life of Jesus is that Jesus did not come to continue something. He came to start something brand new. He didn't come to start Judaism 2.0, right? He came to introduce something that is absolutely brand new, a new covenant, a new command, and a new movement, which was the church. And he also came to teach a new philosophy of leadership. And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. We're going to be mainly in the John 11 and the Mark 10 area. So if you want to be finding those two scriptures, that would be great. Even those watching at home, like my mother and my wife, and maybe a couple of others. Even if you're watching later in the week, go ahead and find that so you can be following along as we look through these scriptures. John 11, we're going to be starting there and working through, and then Mark 10 as well. So we're going to begin with a very familiar story. If you've been in church, and you can't assume that everybody knows the story, but if you've been in church for a while, you've heard the story of Lazarus, right? Now, what was the big deal about Lazarus? He died, and then he was raised from the dead. That's exactly right. That's the big story. And of all of Jesus' miracles, all the signs he performed, this really caused the biggest stir. And when we get into the story, I'm going to share something. It has just gone over my head for 60 years. I've never noticed this, or else if I did, I forgot. And so I'll share that when we get to that point. So, yeah, this miracle caused the biggest stir. It was bigger than, you remember a few weeks ago we talked about them going through and picking the grains of wheat as they walked through the field, bigger than that. And we'll see why here in a little bit. But before Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, we're at the end of John chapter 10. And Jesus escapes getting stoned, right? And there's only a few reasons why you could get stoned, and I'm talking about having stones thrown at you until you die, right? There's only a few reasons in that culture why you could get stoned to death. And you think, well, why would that be? Well, as we look in John 10:33, it says, "We are not stoning you for any good work," they replied, "but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God." You may have heard it said that Jesus never claimed that he was God. And while in the scripture you won't see in red letters, Jesus said, "I am God," it was understood what he was claiming, and that's why they were wanting to stone him, is because he was claiming him to be God. And so after that, he leaves. Goes through the crowd. He goes back on the other side of the Jordan. That's where John the Baptist was baptizing, as we saw in week 1. And so just to give you a little bit of a geography lesson here, I'm going to turn around like this because this is how the map looks. So if you think of a cross-section of Israel, okay, so you're looking at it from way back, and you're looking at the mountains and all that. So if you got the sea over here, you've got the Mediterranean Sea. So you got the sea coast, and as it gets further inland, it gets more and more mountainous, and Jerusalem's kind of in the middle. It's kind of up high, and then it slopes back down till you get way below sea level over here in the Jordan River and Dead Sea. So that's the look of that. So you got Jerusalem, you got the Jordan River, and so Bethany on the other side of the Jordan, of course, is on the other side of the Jordan, right? So that's where Jesus went to. So that takes us to John chapter 11. That's where we're going to start today, John chapter 11. All right, first 3 verses. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now laid sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord, wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. Okay, so we got these 3 siblings, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Lazarus is sick. Sisters are concerned. They send word to Jesus. Being close friends, they know where he is kind of hiding out right now, so they send word to him. Lord, the one you love is sick. And so, and I've said this before when we're looking at the Apostle John, because that's that's a term that the Apostle John used for himself, was the one whom the Lord loved, right? Or the one that the Lord loves. And so just to make sure that here, now this form of love is phileo, okay, like Philadelphia, the city of what? Brotherly love. And so that's a brotherly, my pal, kind of love you kind of love. So it's not the agape love. Doesn't mean that he didn't love him with agape. But anyway, just to make sure, because, you got people who will read things that aren't in, they'll read into some kind of relationship, sexual relationship or something that's there. This was a friend, okay, just to make sure we know that. So what did Jesus do? Well, we didn't read it, but down in verse 6 it said he stayed where he was for 2 more days. Now, if my really good friend were sick and I was sent word, I would probably be hightailing it back to see my friend if it was that bad that they would send word to me. But Jesus didn't do that, did he? Because he had a plan. He had a plan kind of up his sleeve. And this plan was going to end up being the biggest stir of all of his miracles. And so after 2 days, they go back to Bethany. And Bethany's pretty close to Jerusalem. And the disciples there, as they're getting ready to go, the disciples in verse 8, they say, no, wait a minute, before we go back, don't you remember they were just trying to stone you back here in Judea? We need to stay over here on this side of the Jordan. And Jesus explained, Lazarus is dead. You're getting ready to witness something big. And so Thomas, he usually gets a bad rap, doesn't he? Because what do we call his first name? Doubting. That's right, Doubting Thomas. But here in verse 16 of John 11, he's gung-ho. He says, let's all go. Let's also go that we may die with him. It's like if he's going to get stoned, we're going to suffer with him. So that's kind of, Thomas is a good guy. He just had a little doubt, is all. So let's go on down to verse 17. I'm going to read 17 through 21 of John chapter 11. Okay, so he's going into Bethany. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, said Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So Lazarus is in the tomb for how many days? 4 days. 4 days. Now it's about walking distance, and remember they're going uphill as well. It's about an 11 to 12 hour walk. So that could be 1 full day. It could be 2 full days. Jerusalem's only a couple of miles from Bethany. The 11-hour walk was from Bethany on the other side of the Jordan where Jesus was to this other Bethany. All right, so, okay, it's only 2 miles from Jerusalem. It said what? Many Jews from Jerusalem came down to do what? To comfort, right? They knew that Lazarus had died, and so they were down. They were Baptists probably. They were bringing casseroles down to Mary and Martha, doing all that good stuff that you're supposed to do. And here's one thing that we miss sometimes here. Because Lazarus died, now if Jesus had come back, this wouldn't have happened. But because Lazarus died, many people came from Jerusalem to Bethany to comfort Mary and Martha. If he had come earlier, they would not have seen this resurrection. Okay, if Jesus had come earlier and healed Lazarus. So Jesus and Martha have this dialogue. If you had been here, Lazarus wouldn't have died. And Jesus, yeah, but basically you don't know how the story is going to end. Just watch, okay? Now compare what Martha says here to the Sunday school lesson we had a couple of Sundays ago, when the widow says to Elijah, "Since you are here, right? Since you are here, my son has died." Martha says, "If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died." It's similar but different. We get down to the shortest verse in the Bible. Anybody have that for their life verse? John 11:35. What is that verse? Everybody here knows that. That's good. Jesus wept. That's right. John 11:35. So there you have your Bible memory for the night. You got that? You can mark that off your list. And people were saying, surely this guy he's opened the eyes of the blind, he could have prevented this guy's death. He could have done that. Jesus says, "Roll away the stone." And Martha says, no, wait a minute, Jesus. He's been dead 4 days, and it's not going to be too pleasant if you roll that stone away. I love what the King James says, "By this time he stinketh." Now, that's one of my favorite King James verses right there. And he commands, he says the command, "Lazarus, come out." And so the walking dead comes out. I mean, he's wrapped in the grave clothes and all that. Jesus says, "Take off those grave clothes and let him go." All right, so that's kind of a synopsis of some of the verses we didn't read. Now we're down to verse 43. We're still in John 11, verse 43. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." Okay, we just said that. The dead man came out. Hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said, "Take off the grave clothes, let him go." Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. See, that's one of the things that has escaped me, that they were down there comforting Mary and Martha. Had Jesus healed him, they wouldn't have seen, they wouldn't have believed. Okay, all right. So many believed, and then verse 46. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is this man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." Wow. All right, so like we said, many of the folks, they were there to comfort the sisters, and so not only could they testify about Lazarus being dead, they knew that was happening. Now they're testifying that he had risen. He was resurrected. And they believed in Jesus. But they saw and they believed. So let's remember this. Christians, those first Christians in Jesus' time, they weren't believers because of faith. Now we studied this in our Sunday school class a few weeks ago, that faith is like Hebrews 11:1 says, it's the evidence of things not seen. Okay, if I don't know something, we'll just take, for instance, the chair. If I've never sat in the chair before, I'm going to go on faith, right, that it's going to hold me up before I sit down in it. But after I get to know the chair, and I know the chair is sturdy enough, I trust the chair. So faith and trust are similar, but there's a little bit of difference. Faith is, I've never experienced this before, I'm going to put my faith in it. Trust is, I have a history with this, and I continue to trust that. That's when a husband, when a spouse cheats, the trust is broken. The trust has to be re-earned. All right, so anyway, all that to say that Christianity back then, those first Christians, they believed because they saw. It wasn't a faith thing, they saw and believed because Christianity is based in fact. Okay? It's based on faith, but it's based in fact. And Christianity it's an informed faith. Okay? But here's the deal. Not everyone believed, did they? Some went and they snitched. They had to go to the Pharisees and say, yeah, Jesus is down there healing people. And so they called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. Remember we've talked about that with our Nicodemus study we had a few weeks ago. The Sanhedrin was kind of like the Supreme Court of the day. And read verse 48 again. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. We can't let this guy Jesus keep going like this, because everyone's going to believe in him. If that happens, well, goodness, what a tragedy if everybody believed in Jesus. And then Rome would do what? They're going to come and take away our temple. And we talked week 1 about the importance of the temple and how that was such a big thing. And Jesus said something greater than the temple is here. They're going to take away our temple and our country. Well, here's a spoiler alert. That happened in the year 70. Rome got fed up with little insurrections, and they came in, destroyed the temple, and took over the country for good there. All right, so let's go on. Read. We're going to skip down to verse 53 of John chapter 11. It says, so from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Okay, so they're serious now. They just don't want to arrest him or harass him. They want to take his life. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with the disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and they stood in the temple courts and asked one another, what do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all? But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it, that they might arrest him. So this Ephraim village is just a little bit north, and that would be west of Jerusalem. So he was up there for a while. Passover is approaching. There are spies. They're looking for Jesus, right? They don't want to arrest him. They want to kill him. Because Passover was one of those celebrations where a lot of times people would claim to be the Messiah. That was the time. So he had all these false messiahs over the years that had come and done that. All right, we're going to read on. Next, John 12:1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Okay, now skip down to verse 9. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there in Bethany and came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way from Jerusalem. So word has spread about Jesus and this miracle of resurrecting Lazarus. And so when people found out that Jesus was in Bethany, they came down to see this miracle worker and Lazarus. It's like Lazarus was this sideshow. He was an attraction. He was a roadside attraction. They wanted to come down and see the man who's been raised from the dead. And so here's what I've missed somehow after 60 years of life, that the religious leaders, and you guys probably have read this and know this, but it's just gone over my head. The religious leaders weren't just out to kill Jesus, but Lazarus as well. They were out to kill him because he was kind of the proof of what had happened, right? Jesus had healed this person, and you can maybe explain that away or something. But here's somebody that people from Jerusalem had come down to comfort Mary and Martha. They knew he was dead. He was in that tomb 4 days. He was resurrected from the dead. They saw it. They witnessed it. More and more people are seeing him alive. They want to kill him and get him out of the way. Somehow that has escaped me. So my apologies for that. So in verses 12 through 16 of John chapter 12, it's Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It's kind of what day of what holiday do we call that? We call it Palm Sunday, that's right, Palm Sunday. Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. So we're down now to John chapter 12, verses 17 through 19. Now the crowd that was with him, with Jesus, when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead, continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he performed this sign, went out to meet him. So the Pharisees said to one another, "See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him." Okay, they were, as hard as they're trying, they're unable to squash the enthusiasm from this one miracle. He's done these other feedings and healings and stuff, and that has kind of gained a little bit, but this was really the one that had stirred up stuff. So the stage is set, the emotions is high, the crowd that's following Jesus is getting stronger. And the disciples, now let's think about the disciples and all this. They've got to feel pretty good. People are finally coming to us. We got Team Jesus going on here, right? They're coming to us. They're believing. They're following. This is great. The momentum's going to keep going. We're going to keep growing, and the religious leaders just get more and more frustrated. This is getting us nowhere. Everybody's going to him. So. Just before this triumphal entry takes place, now we're going to go over to Mark chapter 10, okay? So go ahead and be turning to that, because there's this mixture of emotions among the crowd as Jesus is going to Jerusalem. Okay, so we're in Mark chapter 10, down in verse 32. That's where I'm going to read that one verse to begin with. Mark 10. Verse 32 says, they were on their way up to Jerusalem. Let me stop right there. Just remember my little topography here. They went up to Jerusalem. Okay, that wasn't like they were going north to Jerusalem, like we say we're going up to Little Rock. They were really going up in elevation. They were going up to Jerusalem. All right, verse 32 again. They were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. Now it says, again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. So obviously he's had this conversation that we're getting ready to read. He's had this conversation before, but it's not sinking in to these guys. So he's going to, let's read on. Verse 33 and 34 says, we are going up to Jerusalem. This is Jesus talking. He said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him, and kill him, and 3 days later he will rise. Well, it doesn't get much clearer than that, does it? He's not talking in parables, and he's not, it's clear. Here's what's going to happen. The Son of Man, code name for the Messiah, and he's been calling himself that for quite a while. What's going to happen? I'm going to be handed over to the religious leaders, condemned to death, handed over to the Gentiles, mock, spit, kill, 3 days later, rise. That's our itinerary for the next 3 days, guys. Okay, that's kind of exciting. And they thought they were just going to celebrate the Passover. Here's what's going to happen. But think about, they've seen Jesus just raise somebody who had been dead, for 4 days, see him bring him back to life. They've got the crowd, the swelling of the crowd. The momentum's building, and Jesus saying, "Hey, this is all getting ready to come to an end." It'd be hard to believe that, wouldn't it? It'd be hard to believe that. What's the purpose of that, Jesus? I don't understand. All right, and then, seemingly at the most inopportune time, 2 disciples have a request of Jesus. Let's read on, verse 35 through 40. Then James and John, son of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you, he asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in your glory. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or my left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they've been prepared. All right, so we got James and John. Who's their daddy? Sons of Zebedee, sons of Zebedee. Jesus called them sons of thunder. Okay, if you remember that. They were fishermen when Jesus called them, probably just based on fishermen of that era, probably some rough around the edges kind of guys. In Luke 9, we see the story. They're traveling through a Samaritan village, and the people there did not welcome them. James and John asked permission from Jesus. Let us call down fire from heaven, right? Let us do that and destroy this town. That's pretty thunderous. There's a reason why they were called sons of thunder. And here they have this pretty audacious request. Yeah, Jesus, okay, you've talked about the spitting and the mocking and the killing, and that's pretty bad, but hey, can you do us a solid? Can you do us a solid? We'd like to be your number one and number two guys. Well, we kind of are anyway, but it was that Peter guy. He might be number one, but, we all three of us, Peter, we'll just leave him over here, but James and John, hey, we were with you on the Mount of Transfiguration, right? We're in that inner three. Where were some of the first disciples you called? Can you imagine only having a few days to live and knowing that, and your friends knowing that, and your friend says, hey, would you will your car to me? Would you just go ahead and write that in your will right now? It's like, come on, guys. It's outrageous. And you know what Jesus say? He said, you don't know what you're asking. Can you go through the same thing that I'm going to go through? Oh, yeah, we can. We can do it. Can we do it? Yes, we can. The Olympics... The Olympics just finished up a week or so ago. And you may have been one of those. You may have heard people say, I would do anything to be able to swim like that or run that fast or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's the deal. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Because you see the glory of the finished product. You see the fast runner, the fast swimmer. You don't see the hours and hours of months and years of hard work that went into that. And the same thing with any talent. Especially like music. I was watching a special on the Carpenters. You older folks remember them. Carpenters the other night. And Richard Carpenter said, most people think that we were an overnight success. No, the song Close to You was an overnight success, but it took us years to get to that point. So kind of the same thing. The disciples, they think that we want to suffer. We'll do whatever. Okay, Jesus says, all right, guys, you will suffer this. You will go through the same things I will. But those spots, they're already reserved. Okay, so don't even ask about those. Here's the thing. Did they suffer? Let me read to you. You don't have to turn. I'm just going to read to you. Acts 12, verses 1 and 2. It says, about this time, King Herod arrested some of those who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. Pretty early on. Here's in Acts chapter 12, not too long after the resurrection. Brother James did meet his end. Now, we don't really know about John. We know he wrote 5 books of the New Testament. He died an old man because Revelation was one of those 5 books. It was written around the year 90 or so that's 60-ish years after the resurrection. We do know he was banished to that island of Patmos when he wrote Revelation. So there was some persecution there in his life, but to how he died, we really don't know that. There's some traditions and rumors and all that, but we really don't know. All right, let's get back to the story. Back to Mark chapter 10, verse 41. Okay, the 10, we have the 2, James and John. They're asking for a solid. Mark 10:41. When the 10, the other disciples, heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Okay, well, indignant doesn't just mean I'm mad. It doesn't mean I'm angry. It's I feel angry because I perceive some unfair treatment. They weren't mad that James and John asked it. They were mad that they weren't included. We want to be number 1, number 2 too. Hey, what about us? So here's the thing. Jesus is gaining popularity. The crowds are following him. He's performed so many miracles and signs. And the latest one, this Lazarus miracle, was spectacular. And the thought is nothing can stop Team Jesus, and we want to ride these coattails. We're on the Jesus train here. Now, 3 years ago, when Jesus called them, They had these various occupations. Like we said, some of them were common fishermen. But now, they can be somebody, right? They've got this powerful guy who can do miracles, and they're in the inner 3 or 12, and they were powerless in society, and now they can be powerful. But Jesus has something to say about that kind of mindset. And this is where he introduces this upside-down concept of leadership. And so, as Christians, this little mini lecture that Jesus is getting ready to give is for us, and especially for people in church leadership. Okay, and especially for people who are paid to be in church leadership. But anytime, the higher up you go, kind of the higher the expectation, right? So let's read that. Mark chapter 10, Mark chapter 10, verse 42 through 45. Jesus called them together. This is after they became indignant. Okay, Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must also be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to serve, or did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So Jesus is saying, guys, you've seen how the Gentiles work. You've seen how the Romans exercise their power. Those are on the top. They order those who are in lower rank. They lord it over their underlings. The work flows downhill. The money, the fame, the prestige, the power goes uphill, right? At this point, I'm sure the disciples are thinking, yep, that's what we want. We want to be up at the top with you. But Jesus burst their bubble with 4 little words in English, at least. It's 3 words in Greek. Not so with you. Not so with you. Now, he didn't condemn wanting to be great. He didn't condemn greatness. He didn't condemn power or leadership. But he turned the qualifications of being a leader in the kingdom, he turned that upside down from the secular idea of leadership. You want to be great? You got to be a servant. You want to be first? You got to be last. You got to be a slave to all. And Jesus is going to put these words into action here in our next story in a few minutes. And here's the thing. Jesus is going to require his subjects, Christians, to do the same thing. Paul writes in Philippians 2:3, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourself." Okay? And even if you think about it, even the concept of spiritual gifts falls under this upside down philosophy, because we're gifted, well, a birthday gift that you get or a Christmas gift that you receive is for you, right? You open it up. If I opened it up and I saw that it was a KitchenAid, I would think, oh, thanks. Here, Ruth, enjoy my present, because the gift is supposed to be for me. But here's the thing with spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts are given to us for other people. It's kind of an upside down thing, isn't it? In fact, the 1 Corinthians 12:7 says, "Now to each one the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good." It's not, the spiritual gift isn't given just for the person, it's given to the person for them to exercise to benefit other people. All right, so back to Mark chapter 10. Jesus talks about himself then. He says, "For I, the Son of Man, I didn't come to be served, but I came to serve." And to what extent is he going to serve? "I'm going to give my life as a ransom for many." That's putting yourself last, okay? That's the ultimate service. So you have Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. The king came to lay his life down for his subjects, not the other way around. It's the other way around in the world. The subjects fight for and lay their life down for the king. Here, the king's laying his life down for his subjects. Now, we're going to go back to John chapter 13. Okay, this is where we're going to see Jesus personally putting these words into action. All right, so we're back in John chapter 13. I'm going to read verse 1 and then skip down to verse 4. John chapter 13, starting in verse 1, says, "It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Then down to verse 4. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he had wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, you're going to wash my feet? Jesus said, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. Nope, said Peter, you will never wash my feet. And Jesus answered, said, unless I wash you, you will have no part of me. And how did Peter respond? Wash me all, just head to toe, right? All right. So this is the night before Passover. We're in Jerusalem. And you know, hospitality varies. Hospitality varies from culture to culture. In the United States, somebody comes to our house. We want to make our guests feel comfortable. You know, we might take their coat or jacket, offer them a glass of tea or a coffee or whatever. I learned last night in our prayer group that in China, they will offer you a cup of hot water. And one of our guys said, well, I'm glad I know that now in case I ever meet somebody from China and they give me some hot water. I might be dipping my fingers like it's a finger bowl or something, but, you know, they give it to you to drink. Now, but in first century Israel, the polite thing to do in having guests or whatever is the washing of the feet. Normally not performed by the host, right? It was normally performed by the lowliest servant. And why would that be? Why would it be someone that's the lowliest servant in the house? Well, you think about walking around, right? We've got sandals on. We're walking outside all the time. We don't have SUVs and all that stuff. We're walking on the dusty roads. And not only that, there are animals on the road. Animals pulling carts and animals doing this and animals doing that all over the road. And as a former high school band person, as we would march in the Southeast Arkansas Livestock and Rodeo Parade behind the horses, we had to be very careful of how we marched down the street because they would leave their droppings behind. So you've got people walking, sometimes stepping in that mess and sometimes getting dusty. So yeah, you don't want, the house owner, you want your lowliest servant to go wash the feet of these people, of your guests. So Jesus was here, as we read here, he's going to personify what he just said in his previous sermon. He wraps the towel around his waist, puts water in the basin, and begins washing the disciples' feet. Now, my best friend is a Lutheran guy, which has nothing to do with this story, but is Lutheran. He is a staunch Pittsburgh Steelers fan, okay? And when we were in college, he had what was called the terrible towel. And I know a lot of teams do this now, but I think they were only ones back in that time that did this, as far as I know. So he had this thing that was called the terrible towel. It was black. He had it pinned up on the wall like it was some kind of trophy or something. And, when they're at the game and you got the fans, they're twirling the towel, right? They're doing. You see that now a little bit more. And that's what we want to do in leadership is twirl the towel. We want to spin the towel because we're in control. But Jesus didn't do that. He put on the towel. And that's our lesson here. That's our example. And as we read on, starting in verse 12, John chapter 13, verses 12 through 17, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I say to you, no servant is greater than his master, nor messenger is greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So here's the very, very important leadership principle here. After Jesus washed his disciples' feet, what did he do? He returned back to his place, didn't he? Because you see, servant leadership isn't about being a doormat, okay? It's about being willing to do whatever and doing whatever when needed, even the lowliest task of washing the horse poo off your disciples' feet. But when he was done, he took his place back at the head of the table, okay? And so what Jesus explains here, that this principle, this leadership principle, isn't just for church leadership. It's for any kind of leadership. If you're a parent, you have children at home, you are their leader, right? You're the leader of them. And so, yes, you know you have to serve your children, but you don't have to cater to them, right? You don't have to rescue them from every situation. And so you have business professionals, church leaders, parents, all these people are leaders in their different arenas. And we can err on either side. We can err on either extreme. We can refuse to serve those whom we lead, or we can cater and pamper and those who are lead. And both are disastrous, right? You refuse, that leads to resentment of your leader, and catering leads to just having a bunch of spoiled babies, right? Because the goal of leadership is I'm leading this person to be a better person, to prepare them for the next step, to train them so others will do the same thing. And refusing and catering does not accomplish this. All right, so in verse 13, Jesus says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, because that's what I am. So I've done this for you, now go and do likewise. Be a servant, exemplify this servant leadership." Now, when you take verse 16 and you just read it by itself, we really don't fully understand what it means. I'm going to read it again here. It says, "Very truly I say to you, no servant is greater than his master, nor messenger is greater than the one who sent him." And you think, what? Yeah, okay, a servant's not greater than his master. I understand that. What are you getting at, Jesus? Well, here's what Jesus is saying. I'm your teacher. I'm your Lord. That's true. I am over you. You have said that, and that is true. I am your leader. I have performed these menial tasks for you. You are my students or my disciples. You're not above doing the things I have done for you. Now, go and do what I've shown you to do. So did the disciples take this to heart? Well, here's what happened. In Acts chapter 6, we have the 12, which are the disciples. They were too busy, distributing food to widows. And the Gentile widows are complaining that the Jewish widows are getting preferential treatment. The disciples are overwhelmed with the task of taking care of the least of these. They have, I think, after the resurrection, that it all kind of sinks in, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. And so that's when the first deacons come along, and they train them and set them in the course of taking care of the women, the widows and orphans. And all this is against. It's all in the middle of this Greek and Roman culture of celebrating victory and strength and conquest and abhorring weakness, because Greek and Roman culture used, actually the religious leaders of Israel too, would use their power to make the powerless even less powerful. But that's not Jesus' way. That's not Jesus' way. We are to leverage any privilege we have, any success that we have, any favor that we have for those under us, those less privileged than us, not just to better ourselves. And if you think about it, that's really the only way the poor and powerless can get ahead at all. Okay? Because think about this. How did women get the right to vote in this country? It took men, it took the men in power to say, yeah, we're going to vote and make that happen, right? How did African American slaves get their freedom? Well, it took enough white men with enough courage to stand up for what's right and even to die for the cause to make that happen, okay? It takes when you just can't hold on to that power, you got to make sure that you're taking care of those who are less fortunate, who are under you, all those things. So here's the thing. Christian leadership isn't just about wielding power. It's about using your power for the betterment of others. Just a couple of closing Bible verses here that relate to this. James 1:27 says, "Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world." It just kind of simplifies, what pure religion is. Kind of goes along with Micah 6:8. "He has told you, O man, what is good. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God. And taking care of those under you and looking out for the underprivileged and the unfortunate, that's justice. That's what justice is. So next week, what we're going to do, we're going to look in detail at what we call the Last Supper. We're going to look in detail about that, about this new covenant and what that is. So that's what we got coming up. All right. Let me pray for us, and then Brother Bob and Meredith are going to come lead us in a couple of songs. Lord, thank you again for your word and for the example of servant leadership that you have shown us. Lord, we're thankful that you didn't immediately go and heal Lazarus, Lord, but that because people were there, people saw, people believed. And while that stirred up a big stink and it caused more and more people to follow you, it just set up this teaching moment for your disciples and ultimately for us as well, Lord, about what it means to be a citizen of your kingdom, what it means to be a leader in the kingdom of God. So, Lord, whatever little bit of power we may have and authority and all that, Lord, help us, remind us to use it for good, to help people, and not to lord it over folks, not to do any of that, but as we study tonight, Lord, to use it for the betterment of other people. We love you, Lord. May the praises we sing be pleasing to your ears. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. Got a pretty good group in here tonight. So we're going to worship as we always do. Our first one tonight is The Lily of the Valley. And then our second song is going to be Without Him. You worship tonight as we sing. I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in Him alone I see all I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow He's my comfort, in trouble He's my stay. He tells me every care on Him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He will never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me here, while I live by faith and do His blessed will. A wall of fire about me, I've nothing left to fear. With His manna He my hungry soul shall fill. Then sweeping up to glory, I'll see His blessed face, where rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul.
You're not on.
I'm not on?
I didn't hear you.
All right, as we continue tonight, there we go. I just got to get a little closer to the microphone. So Without Him, man, this is actually one Meredith's been singing around the house some. She calls it Ship Without a Sail because that's the end of the first verse here. But nonetheless, anybody know this hymn, Without Him? Did you grow up singing it kind of as an invitation song? Yeah, this was kind of a staple, and I've seen many people come to Christ as we were singing this song. So there's just a lot of truth in this message tonight, so I hope it bring back some memories, and at the same time you're able to worship the Lord tonight through this song.
1963.
Without Him I could do nothing. Without Him I surely fail. Without Him I would be drifting like a ship without a sail. You sing, Jesus, oh Jesus, do you know Him today? You can't turn him away. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Without him, how lost I would be. Without him, I would be dying. Without him, I'd be enslaved. Without him, life would be hopeless. But with Jesus, thank God I'm saved. Jesus, oh Jesus, do you know him today? You can't turn him away. Oh Jesus, oh Jesus. Without him, how lost I would be. Aren't you thankful for Jesus? Amen. Praise the Lord. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're going to dismiss our online congregation tonight. So thank you for joining us. Y'all wave bye-bye.